Hey everybody, Pastor Eric here, along with my good friend Pastor Steve. We're excited that we've been able to kind of hang out with you guys and catch up and just go through Scripture. With this new ministry we're trying to get off the ground and continue pressing forward with, called 3 a.m. 3 a.m. We've had a lot of questions, and it's played on several different things. One of them was, you want to share what the first one was, Steve?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that went into it. 3 a.m. is sort of like shorthand for Three Angels Ministries or message, right? Three Angels Message, the idea from Revelation of that sort of being the core of what we believe as Adventist ministers, but also the fact that, man, I feel like me, I'm an insomniac, you know what I mean? I tend to be up. I'm much more of a night owl, so I tend to do a lot of study at 3 a.m. That's,
Yeah.
that's right before I go to bed, you know? So.
Yeah, I've been there, man. I'm not a night owl, but I get it. There's been nights where I have had the best study in the middle of the night, and most random odd things, So,
Yeah.
but it also plays on the three questions we ask, which where is Jesus in the text? Where am I in the text? And it doesn't have to be like chronologically, physically, like just where are you spiritually and so forth. But then the last one is what's the point? Because there's no point in really reading scripture if you don't understand the point. So we try to break it down and make it as easy as possible for everyone watching. And we don't claim to have every single answer. We're not the all-knowing professional here. We're just two friends trying to learn and spend time dissecting scripture together as well. And I don't know about you, Steve, but every time I've ended this time that we've had to discuss, I've walked away learning so much more about the text than I did before. So
Yeah. I've been really enjoying it. It's been a real blessing for me to be able to not only dig into it a little bit deeper myself, but get somebody else's perspective too. So I think that's real helpful.
yeah, all while keeping our social distance here.
Yep.
Although they're changing it. It's no longer social distance; it's personal distance because
Oh, really? I haven't gotten the memo.
Yeah. Well, now they're encouraging social interaction,
Ah,
but through safe personal distance. So it's personal distancing now. Semantics, whatever.
duly noted.
Yeah. So today, what text are we going to be studying, Steve?
We're going to be taking a look at something out of the book of Mark. We're going to be in Mark chapter 9. And that chapter sort of begins with the transfiguration of Jesus on the mountain, right? With his the three closest disciples. And while he's up there doing that, he's left the rest of the 12 down at the base to deal with the people that constantly follow him. So we're going to pick up on verse 21, and that finds us having come back down the mountain after the transfiguration. And there's a big group there, and they come up to find out what's going on. And a father has brought his son to see Jesus. And he's been talking with the disciples, asking, them, since Jesus wasn't right there at that moment, to heal him, because he's been possessed by a demon, and the demon's throwing him into water and into fire and doing all this stuff. And the disciples can't heal the boy. They've done stuff like that in the past, but for whatever reason, they're not able to do it. And right when Jesus and the three closest come back, that's kind of where we enter the story of the disciples not being able to do what this father is hoping that Jesus would do. And so when Jesus gets there, sort of immediately they turn to him and explain to him the situation. And that's kind of where we pick up. So we're going to be looking in Mark 9, starting in verse 21. We're going to run through verse 27 to kind of set the scope of it. But that's sort of the backstory to why we find ourselves in this particular part of scripture.
Awesome. Since you read last time, I'll go ahead and read this time, if that's okay. Starting in verse 21, and I'm reading from the New King James. That's just the Bible that I had here. So whatever version you're reading from out there on the web, just as good, and we hope it's a blessing. So verse 21. So he asked his father, how long has this been happening to him? And he said, from childhood. And often he has thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Jesus said to him, if you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. When Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to a deaf and dumb spirit, I command you, come out of him and enter him no more. Then the spirit cried out, convulsed him greatly, and came out of him. and he became as one dead, so that many said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. Uh, lost my. Yeah, he rose. Sorry,
Yeah.
didn't see the period.
So yeah, I am fascinated by this story in scripture because there's so much to unpack in just a short little thing of time. Well, let's start with that first question. As you read this, as we go through this, where is Jesus in the passage, man?
I mean, he's obviously right there front and center, like we've said in the past. Like he's in it. You know, it's interesting, and we did skip some of it, but you know, he comes to the disciples, like they're all talking about this issue, and like he comes to the disciples, and he's just like straight up, like, when are you guys gonna learn? You know, like I'm right here, and we're gonna get this taken care of. So you definitely see Jesus just like right there in it, along with people,
Mm-hmm.
and in typical Jesus fashion, in a very emotional, stressful, anxious situation, just comes in and like there's nothing off his back. Like, come on, guys, let's get this taken care of. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
You know, I thought it was really interesting because, like, he's been up the mountain with the other three, right? And so the Father comes, and all these people that have come seeking Jesus, and so from his point of view, like Jesus is nowhere to be found, even though he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, right? He's gone where the Father has called him to go. He's taking care of something that needs to be taken care of. So it's not that he's not accessible, right? It's just that in that moment, it seems like in the biggest moment of need that he's not found, and then he appears. You know what I mean? Even though he's been there the whole time, he just might have been out of their sight. He's still there. And I find that kind of interesting because, you know, that I can see parallels between times when I may be searching for him, or I'm going, where are you at? Like I'm here with my issue, like not realizing that my timetable and my understanding of like immediacy might be different from him. Not that he can't do everything all at once, but what I find interesting about this passage is when Jesus comes back, like he knows just when he's needed, just when he needs to address this problem, right? He didn't show up too early, despite what the Father might have thought at the moment. He didn't show up too late. Like he's right on time, you know? And so to me, Jesus is in this, he's showing up when he's needed most, you know?
Yeah.
And which is something that I find really poignant.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I never thought of that. It's so true, man. Like going through life and in just situations, like I always say that, like for me, you know, and in graduating college, for instance, I'll just take that. Like we all graduated kind of the same time. You know, I was interviewing and interviewing and interviewing and interviewing for jobs, and nothing was coming up, and I was just discouraged. And then at the last minute, you know, like I get a call to go to Washington to pastor. And I told somebody afterwards, like, I definitely feel like, you know, God was there from the whole thing. But I can't expect God to work any different than I'm willing to work to, you know. And I don't know about you, bro, but I'm the guy that slides into home base at the last second, you know, just because I've got all these other things going on and I'm trying to do. I overestimate my time, my abilities, and all these other things quite often. And so, like, in my mind, I was like, oh, God slid into home base. But when I looked at it, I worked at this church for 2 years prior to graduating. But all along, the call came from the elder whose son was in the conference that I got a call to.
Mm.
So God was there like the whole time, but he did show up when he was needed, you know, like in that last moment. However, I didn't see what was going on in the background, you know. So like you see this right here with Jesus. You know, Jesus isn't right there from the very beginning because he's on the mount, he's being transfigured, and all this other crazy stuff is happening. And then he comes down, but his disciples were there working already. His disciples were there trying. So there was that connection.
Right.
But then when he comes in, like it almost looks like he slides into home base. But no, man, he was there the whole time. And
Right.
yeah, like
And I love too that, like, as soon as he shows up, the fact that things haven't gone this father's way,
Mhm.
he doesn't let that discourage him from immediately, as Mark says, and I love that he uses that word a lot, but he just immediately goes to Jesus because he's like, all right, this is what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for the chance to put this in your hands. And I was willing to, abide by, okay, you're not here right in this moment in the way that I expect. Your disciples are here. I'm willing to have them help too. And there's been plenty of times, if you look at the ministry of Jesus, where the disciples had gone out, they've healed people of sickness, right? Jesus has sent them out to do that. They've taken care of people with spiritual issues like this in the past. Like, this wasn't something new or something that they hadn't done before in his name. And he left them at the base of the mountain to deal with situations like this, right? So it wasn't that he hadn't made provision,
Yep.
but in this one particular instance, for whatever reason, it's not going the way that the father expected to go. And I'm sure that had to like impact his faith in that moment, right? Because you've been in those situations where God's there, he's made provision, he's done these things, but you're still going through something or still experiencing something that is sort of shaking your faith, right? That it's causing you to question, it's causing you to be like, well, this is not what I expected, and I'm not seeing results like what I would hope to see maybe when I brought this whatever issue to God. And so in those moments, right, when it looks like things aren't exactly playing out the way that we expect, it can be a really trying experience. And what I love is that this father has perseverance, right, where he's willing to say, okay, I've had all these things happen, and I'm still seeing my kid deal with all this stuff, but I'm here because I know that Jesus can make a difference, and so I'm not going to give up just because things haven't played out the way that I expected.
Yeah, and you can only imagine like the emotional roller coaster he was on with the disciples who had been trying, and these guys are supposed to be the ones that could, and they had the connections and so forth. And I love too what Jesus comes in here and says in 23. Like, Jesus doesn't just come in and say done. Like, Jesus addresses the issues too. Like, if you can believe, all things are possible to him.
Well, even you take it back, even right to the beginning of that thing, right in verse 21, where the father lays out everything, right? He explains like who he is, what's wrong with his son, and he gives them the whole deal. And I have to believe there's urgency in his voice and as he's doing this, right? That this is sort of a crisis situation, an emergency situation. And in verse 21, Jesus responds very calmly, right? And because he says, well, how long has this been happening?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm putting myself in it, like if that's me, I'm kind of like, why does how long matter? You know what I mean? Yeah, this is the issue. Like, I don't know, like since he's been a kid, and you I don't know, to me, I sort of read that exasperation in his answer, because he said, from childhood, and he's laying out again, right? It's done this a lot. It wants to destroy him, but if you can do anything, then please have compassion. There's this desperation in this father's plea, right? Like he's sort of like at the end of his rope, like he did at the limit of what he can take, because he's like, if you can do anything, like we don't have time to talk about like how long, like just do something, please.
See, and I can see that too, like with some condescension in the voice of kind of Jesus, but from the Father as well. Because it starts off, says, but if you can do anything, and then Jesus comes back and he's like, well, yeah, if you can believe,
Yeah, that if you can, like,
like
that reminder of like, well, I mean,
I've always thought it'd be neat to be with Jesus and like hear some of the conversations he would have had, because like there's several times in scripture where you read Jesus' conversations and you're just like, was that condescending or was that serious? Because like several times he goes up to his mom too and he's like, woman,
But I as much as I've looked at this, this is one that I return to a lot. I think Jesus knows exactly what to say
Mm-hmm.
to get to the heart of the matter in a way that's going to have like lasting implications, right? So he's asking these questions and it's prompting these responses for this father. And when he responds, the way he responds is going to have a lasting impact on the father and the son's understanding of who Jesus is and what it means to be loved by God. but also in the way that we understand stuff. And the Father can't maybe see it in that moment, but like this call and response is definitely for our benefit,
Yeah.
thousands of years later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to me, it shows that nothing is like accidental with God. Nothing is like a throwaway line, right? Like Jesus didn't say anything and be like, that didn't really have like an impact or a meaning. Like there's always something behind why. And that's one of the things that I try to like keep in mind in my own life when things happen, especially when things aren't happening the way that I would enjoy or expect, and you have frustrations and you have things where your faith can be shaken, and you seek a response from God. And sometimes it seems like in the response, you're like, well, that's not what I expected you to say. And it's like, well, it might not be what you expect, but that doesn't mean that there's not power and validity in what I'm saying and why, because Jesus doesn't say these things and then turn the dad away. Like, if I can, like, you just need to have faith, but you didn't have enough, so I'm sorry, I can't work with you.
Yep.
He says, if you can, and the way that this dad responds is the thing that has like stuck with me the most out of this story. And it's the one thing that when I'm feeling like I'm struggling with my faith, I feel like this dad, and when he just kind of cries out, I believe, but help me in my unbelief. There have been so many times when that has been my cry to God, where it's like, I know you're there. I have like the theoretical knowledge. I have all this stuff. Like I get it, but I need something right now. I need proof. I need the reality of you and not just the theory, right? I need more than just the story. I need more than just the hope. I need action from you in a way that shows that you're real and that you are who you say you are. And so I believe that you are all those things, but man, I'm panicking because I'm not strong enough, or I'm not in a place where I'm able to deal with this, and I need you to step in and be God, because I don't have it in me maybe to keep believing if things go the way that they're going.
Yeah.
And
isn't that true though, as humans, like, while we don't demand it of, and some may, but like we don't demand it of God, like we definitely need and want that, like that response of like, hey, hang on,
and I love that when Jesus, he doesn't berate the dad for having doubt or for questioning anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's not like, oh, I can't work with you. Yeah. I believe, help me in my unbelief. And Jesus responds in a way that strengthens his belief, right? But even with that, like, Jesus saw all these things were going on. He hears his father's cry. And so he commands this spirit to leave the boy alone and never enter him again, right?
Yeah.
But the initial reaction after he does this makes it look like a failure, because it says in verse 26 that he cries out, convulses him terribly. It does come out, but it left him, leaving him so corpse-like that everyone thought he was dead. So here's his father pleading with Jesus to heal the boy and set him free from this thing. And when Jesus does, it looks like he's failed in the moment, right? In the immediate aftermath, looks like a failure. And the dad's already been saying, oh, my faith isn't strong enough. But the dad doesn't give up. He doesn't walk away dejected. He doesn't turn and say, well, you couldn't even do this thing that I asked, whatever, especially on the heels of the disciples already failing too. He waits. And again, you see that thing with God's timing where he says it looks like he fails, but it's only when he goes and walks over to the boy, takes him by the hand and lifts him up, that it becomes apparent that he's healed him.
Yeah.
And that the power that Jesus possesses has worked a miracle.
Yeah.
Father before behalf, And I don't know about you, but like, you ask that question, like, where are you in this? Like, I definitely see myself in the father's shoes.
Oh yeah.
Of totally. Just sometimes being at my wit's end and being desperate for God to act, and feeling like sometimes I think my prayer has been answered, but I'm not sure, because it looks like right in that moment that maybe things were a failure. Maybe things didn't happen the way that I expected. Maybe God didn't come through. Yeah. So I feel like for me, a lot of the times I'm in that moment of waiting to see, how exactly the way that Jesus answered this prayer is going to play out. And it's never failed whenever I'm in that position. I don't know if it's been the same with you, but when God comes over, when he takes me by the hand and he sort of like lifts me up and through the thing, then you see the true power of what God has done and the reality of how God has answered the prayer. And it speaks to reinforcing my faith in a way that would never have happened if he didn't do it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, man. Like, it's so hard to even articulate in those moments, like what you're going through. And like this father, like, I've had those moments where I've been like that. Like, I don't even know the words to say besides Lord help.
Mm-hmm.
You know, oftentimes you feel like your prayers have to be these eloquent like cries, like David wrote these beautiful psalms. No, man, like there have been times where I've just been like, Lord, help. And it is cool now sitting in my house and like right here with you, that I'm not in one of those positions, but it is cool now to look back and see those and be like, man, God was there and he did help me. It didn't feel immediate, because you have to think here too, like this father cries out and he's like, nothing's happening. And then Jesus calls him out and yeah, exactly. Like he's still dead. What? Like all these issues and so forth. But totally, man, for me, I'm right there with the father. Just exactly. I've been there. And who's to say I'm not going to get back there soon? Like we won't be in that position. Definitely with this whole quarantine and not working and kind of things being weird, like it definitely does give you some anxiety. Like, where are we going to be in 3 months? Don't know.
And you see in this particular example too, like the contrast between the way that the enemy operates and the way that God operates, right? Because everything that the enemy does is designed to intimidate, to discourage, to just bully people who are trying to come to Jesus. And Jesus responds with compassion, responds with patience, and he responds with the perfect answer in the perfect time, right?
Well,
in a way that answers, like with this father, he not only answered the man's prayer, but he did it in a way that glorified God's name to the community at large in that moment, but also to us, like I said, down through history, being able to return to this example of God's compassion and his willingness to respond even in our moments of doubt, right? Like, the devil loves to say, it's like, oh yeah, your faith isn't strong enough, God's not going to honor your request. We have here this proof that, yeah, there are times where our faith isn't strong enough, and Jesus comes through in a way that gives us the strength to hold on. He reinforces his love for us. He reiterates his power as creator God with the ability to answer our prayers in ways that we could never hope to see happen if we're just trying to do it through our own efforts,
Well, but I like there too, like in verse 25, he doesn't even really respond to the dad. Like he just steps into action. It just says that he rebuked the spirit, saying, and like he didn't even respond to the dad of help my unbelief. He could have said something to the dad, but he didn't. He just says, all right, let's do this. We're here, and it is like seeing kind of what's the point. I'm kind of jumping to that question. What's the point? Like, so Jesus he's ready for action. He's ready to work. He's always there. Like, that's the whole point, is that he may not always respond to us, but he's going to do something. He's never just not going to do something.
Yeah. And always in a way that shows his true nature and his true power and the depths of his love for us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This text packed, man.
I know there's so much in it.
There's
I love, the idea of like, what's the point, is that even when our faith isn't enough, he is, and he's willing to work with us however he finds us. Like our faith isn't enough. Okay, I'll do something that'll strengthen it, so that, like you said, when you look at it in hindsight, every time you return to that example of my love in action, it's going to strengthen it even more. And that's what I love about the love of God, right? It's not just talk. It is action. You know.
Well, and this dad and even the boy, well, not if they're around anymore, but they would look back from this moment and be like, man, what a low moment, but what a high moment, and like,
Mhm.
what an emotional roller coaster. I've been through moments like that in my life. Like, you see some bad things happen, but out of it, you see this amazing, beautiful thing happen. And like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's a cool text.
It's beautiful, and I got to think, that in moments of darkness that were to come, like especially thinking about it from the disciple standpoint, they see this happen,
Mm-hmm.
and then in the near future, they see God die in front of their eyes. They see Christ on the cross, and
Yeah,
and
dude.
and it looks like all hope is lost. It seems like in that moment, they're pleading with God to step in and intervene and do something has gone unanswered, even though what Jesus is doing by dying is the answer. You know what I mean? It's thousands of years of people pleading with God to step in and do something. Even on our side of things, like the realization that like what he did on the cross is the answer to our prayers that we don't even know to pray yet. You know, that's one of those things where I think hindsight becomes so important because we can look back and we can see it's like, oh yeah, he's listening, he's
Mm-hmm.
responding, and sometimes, like you said, it's not a long drawn out explanation followed by it's just action
Mm-hmm.
moment, and then you can go like, and this is what happened later. I'm gonna sit you down and explain it to you later.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is like God is in control and he is responding in that moment when it's needed most in the way that it's needed most.
Yeah, definitely. Powerful, man. Powerful. Well, Pastor Steve, it's always a blessing, man.
Yeah.
And viewers out there, I hope that you guys are blessed as well. I know that there's a lot to go over in this text, and I don't know how much time we've gone so far, but I know that every time we do this, like I feel like it's just pretty quick, and then I look back and it's whole 20, 25 minutes long. So yeah, it's a blessing, man. I could do this all day.
Definitely.
Uh, and if you guys out there have any texts in particular that you want to see studied or some that are favorite to you, drop them in the comments. We'll be happy to explore them. We're just here to study the Bible together. And if you guys have ideas or thoughts on some of this stuff, leave us comments. We're not the scholarly pros. We're just here as two friends trying to study the Bible together. So, and we want to include you on the journey. So, thanks so much, Pastor Steve. You got anything?
Yeah, just we appreciate you allowing us into your homes, into your lives, to be able to share the stuff with you. So thank you all for that. Like you said, if there's anything that we can do, anything we can pray for, drop it in the comments below. Go ahead and like, subscribe, share it if you feel like it'd be a benefit to you or others. And we just thank you for the chance we have to share in this time with you. So appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. We look forward to seeing you again on another episode of 3 a.m. See you guys soon.
Bye.